All right, I'm here with my buddy Whiskey. Now, the dog that I'm here actually to work with is Diesel. And Diesel is a little bit fearfully reactive, so we're not going to actually do it with him in this video. I'm going to be demonstrating this video how you can teach dogs to behave better at the door. Specifically, how to get them to sit and wait for permission to go out the door. And the reason for that is Diesel's a 10-year-old pitty, and he's got some, not mobility issues, but the guardian is worried because when this is the puppy, Whiskey is only 2.5, and when they open the door, they're so excited, they fly out the door, and she's worried, the guardians are worried they're going to blow out the knee or something like that there. So dogs are very instinctive creatures. They just see a squirrel and they go get the squirrel. They don't think that squirrel just went across a busy street, I'm probably going to get hit by a car. They just go get the squirrel. So basically what we want to do is we want to teach the dog how to behave. Now when it comes to dogs, for some reason we do something to dogs that we would never accept for ourselves as humans. If I'm going to learn how to do something, I'm going to learn typically in a classroom environment. I'm going to watch a video or read a book or watch a lecture or watch a presentation on how to do it. I'm going to study all the individual components or pieces of that activity, and then I'm going to practice each individual activity until I can do each step by itself. And before I actually am doing the real world thing for myself, I probably studied it and read about it, and I probably watched other people do it several times. Then I practice it in a practice scenario multiple times. So if I make a mistake, it's not the real world situation. Learning to drive your car at 5 o'clock traffic in the busiest street in town is guaranteed to get you in an accident. So we practice in the parking lot. Similar principle here. So, and this is not just for this, but you can use the same technique for anything. Anytime your dog does not behave the way you want, the first thing you should ask yourself is, have I taught the dog how I expect them to behave? If I haven't, then it's my fault, not the dog's fault. Then what I do is I recreate the situation into the easiest version possible, and I help the dog practice the first step over and over and over again until it's behaving the way that I want. Only then do I go to step number 2. And I practice step number 2 over and over again until the dog's behaving what I want for all the individual steps. And once the dog can do all this individual steps for the easiest version possible, only then do I start piecing the whole thing together. Again, the easiest version possible instead of individual steps, now all the steps together. And once the dog can perform there, then I gradually start increasing the level of difficulty until I work our way back up to the real world situation, the whole full Monty of the activity. But now we've broken it down, we've taught the dog how to behave, we help the dog practice. Now the dog can actually perform the way that we want. So I'm about to show you how to do that. So the first, when we think of letting a dog out the door, we just think we go to the door, open the door, let them out, and they run out. It's actually several steps. The first step is I walk towards the door. Now I'm going to be using a leash here because I don't want Whiskey to run out, but the first stage of this, I would not have you using a leash. The first step is you just simply get up and walk over to the door. Now, when we go to the door, we're going to let the dogs out. What do? We reach over and put our hand on the handle, and then we say sit, if we're going to even say that at all. The dog's like, you're already halfway through, just open the door anyways. So this is already part of assuming that I'm going to do it. So the first thing I do is I walk to where the door is. And I'm not going to open the door with the dog in front of me, because whoever's in front of the dog rolls the leader. So if I walk over the door and the dog steps in front of me and I continue, not saying no and the dog rolls the same way of saying yes. So the dog runs in front of me and I continue the process of opening the door. I'm saying I'm cool with you being in front, which I'm not. So you see there's a little mat there. You're going to see a little red zigzagged mat. The rule is he's not allowed to be on the mat. So the first stage is I'm going to walk to the door, and as soon as he walks on, well, I'm going to describe it because I don't want to take off the leash for this video. So what you're going to do is walk to the door, and as soon as he walks on the mat, you're going to turn around and go sit back down on the couch. Do this at times when you're not planning on letting him out. So there's no pressure for you. And if he whimpers or whines or protests or barks, you don't look at him at all. You wait for the dog to settle down completely. And like we talked about off camera, exercising the dog ahead of time to put them in a position to succeed. Just give 10 minutes to recover. So this might take several steps before you go over there, but the instant he takes the first paw on that carpet rug, that's when I would move away. So that way he learns what you want to do. An alternative way of doing that would be what I'm going to show you right here. So I might use a little positive reinforcement with a treat. I might walk over here and say, Whiskey, sit. I'm only saying it once. The treat's here. Sit. And then I would walk away and walk back here and tell him to sit. And when he sits, give him a treat and say sit. Now you could also come up with a command word for this. Call this station, attention, on deck, batter up, whatever you want to use. Come up with a funny word if you can. So batter up means come over here and sit here and the person's going to give me a treat. We're not even reaching for the door. We're not opening the door. There's no excitement outside. We're just teaching the dog just to come to this step over and over again. And this would probably be the preferred way that I would recommend you do it, because this is just all positive reinforcement. After a while, he'll just come and sit here. Now, the rule that I talked about off camera is the dogs can't go out the door unless they sit first. So I would maybe do that first, but eventually have the dog sit in this place. All right, so now I've got the leash. Whiskey, sit. So if he doesn't sit, I'm going to walk away. And that's why I practice this rule first. Let me actually do this so I'm not so backlit for this video. There you go. Otherwise, you can't see me if the light source is behind me. All right, so basically this would normally be open. I come over here, I tell him to sit. He has 3 seconds to sit. If he doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I would just sit down right here. And like we talked about off camera. So let's say that now we've achieved that, and now they just go sit here when they want to go outside. Now we come over here and we tell him to sit. If the dog sits, then I reach for the handle. As soon as I start reaching, the dog's like, oh, he's about to open the door, and he's going to get up to bolt out the door. As soon as he gets up, I pull back. I haven't even touched it. If the handle is right there, so I'm going to reach this far, and that's probably when the dog's going to get up. So I pull my arm back to the side, and I tell the dog to sit 1 time. If he sits within 3 seconds, then I would reach for it again. If he doesn't sit within 3 seconds, I would go sit on the couch and watch some TV. He is out for that opportunity. And no skin off your nose, because again, like we talked about before, you don't plan on going outside anyways. So he's like, oh man, I screwed up. This might take several repetitions, and that's okay. So eventually you get to the point where he's sitting right here, and you reach, and he stays seated, and you can get all the way to where the handle is, and touch the handle, and he stays seated. Well, what do we have here? I'm going to have you film him. Go down to the dog. As soon as what I did is I unlocked the latch here. You come back to me. So as soon as I undid the latch, you saw he heard that and he turned, because that latch is associated with the door opening. So that's one of the steps. So let's say I get him, so he's sitting here. I reach all the way to the handle. He stays seated. I would pick up the latch several times, as loud as you can. And if he gets up, I stop, tell him to sit. If he sits, within 3 seconds of the first time I say it, I reach and I practice that step again. So step 1 is you have to stay there. Step 2, you have to sit there. Step 3 is you have to sit there as I reach for the handle. Step 4 is you have to sit there as I jiggle the lock up and down. That sound is going to be really attractive for him when I go out there. And practice over and over until he stays seated. Then the next step is, once I have it open, is I'm going to open it like that much. And the dog took a step close. If he gets up, close the door, and we go back, we reset to 0. So we're always going to go back to the entry. The 0 is I'm standing here with my hands at my side and waiting for the dog to do what I want the dog to do. And then eventually I'm going to open it a little bit, and a little bit more. And you saw he's jumping towards it, because the door opens. It's a race to get out those stairs, and that's why one of them is going to blow out their knee eventually on that deck is calm, or is wet. So the next step is, now once we've gotten to the point where I should be able to open this door all the way, and the dog stays right here. Larry, if you actually step over there, you won't be backlit. I know it's not the best angle, but that's okay. I'm just describing it, most of it at this point anyways. So eventually you can open it, and the dogs are staying right there. Now I practice with each dog 1 at a time, until you can go through this whole process with Diesel or with Whiskey separately, and they stay seated, and that door is wide open. They're looking up at you for permission to go outside. Now the way I teach a dog to go outside is I'd like to come up with a different command word for each dog. Now, I usually do this a little bit differently. What I would usually do, we have kind of the door here, and there's a deck, and then there's stairs down the deck. So in this video, we're going to go a little bit further, but if you don't have that deck, and you just want your dog to sit at the door, once we've gone through all the stages I've talked about, so I can open the door, the dog stays here. Whiskey. Then I'd show Whiskey I have a treat that I know that Whiskey likes, and I would throw it right outside the door. Whiskey would run out the door and licks it up, and I would come up with a fun word that means Whiskey gets to go outside. So maybe we would call it Jack Daniels. And so when he licks up the treat, here's Jack. Or maybe, that's not really very funny. I like using fun words. So let's call it Adventure. So as soon as he licks up, you hear Adventure. And then he comes back inside, you throw another treat out, Adventure. So Adventure is the command word that releases me from a sit and means I got to go out in the yard. And we might have a different command word for Diesel. Maybe Diesel's, we call it Optimus, or whatever, I don't know, whatever the words are that you want. Something that's going to make you guys laugh. So they could both be sitting at the door. The humans could all go out. You could be sitting there on your deck enjoying the sun, and the dogs are sitting there waiting. There's nothing blocking them other than their self-control and self-restraint. Like we talked about earlier, they don't have that. Well, now we're helping them practice it every single time we let them through the door. And then, you're like, okay, and maybe they're standing there. And as soon as Whiskey sits, then you say Adventure, and then Whiskey runs through the door. Diesel doesn't, because that's not his command word. So now we've achieved sitting at the door, behaving the way we want through the whole process of opening the door, the dog practicing staying at the open door, waiting for permission to go out, and then creating a command word. So let's say that we've achieved all those things. Now we're gonna go outside, I'm gonna show you the next step. So I'm gonna go through the door first. We'll have our cameraman's gonna follow us. Right there is probably a good spot. All right, so the next step is I want to teach the dogs that I want them to sit right here. So I do the same thing I told you there. So whiskey, whiskey, whiskey. Now whiskey's a little bit off his game because of this leash, and I'm here. It's been 3 hours. So you would, but I would want to have a leash because we want to prevent him from running down there. So use his regular leash so he's not thrown off. So I would just, so you've already achieved that one. You can leave the door, come over here, and I've seen people put like a painted X on or a tape or something like that, or put a box. So put a box for each one of them. And so you bring them over here, have them go sit in that box and give them the treat. And maybe that is, you know, you call that station 1, station 2. Again, come up with something unique. I mean, maybe that's Tulsa and this is Stillwater if you want to go with the Oklahoma thing. And then again, the step that I talked about here, throwing the treat out and saying adventure, that would actually occur if you guys hear because you have an extra step. So now what happens is the dogs come to the door, they sit, and they're under control. The humans come and open the door, the dogs stay under control, now the door is there. When we give them the command doesn't mean go nuts, the command means come right here and sit here. And then we'd have the next dog come and sit there, once we can eventually do it with both of them, and then adventure or whatever the word is, and the dogs get to go out there on their own. So the idea for this is we've broken it down into individual steps, and you're gonna let them out here multiple times a day. It's gonna be about a week or 2 of practicing to get to this point. But then every time you do this, this becomes an exercise of self-control, respect for my guardians, and not tearing ass out there. And the dogs see and respect the humans a little bit more because the humans have taught them how to do this and expect them to hold their feet to the fire if they don't do it. Whiskey, sit, sit. Remember, always give the treat first and the command word goes in afterwards. And if the dog spits out a treat you know that they like, that means that they're off and above threshold. I think for him it's because he's on the leash. But this is my buddy Whiskey, and these are some tips and tricks you can use to teach your dog to sit and wait for permission to go out the door, as well as to practice and develop a little bit of self-control.